This session will begin shortly. Please take your seats.
We know that young children are among the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. So this conversation and the actions that come from it today are critical.
We know firsthand what's happening at the Clinton Global Initiative because we're working with people on the ground who are living it.
Climate change is a behavior change issue. We need to make better and different decisions. We need to empower our youth to understand what that means and what they can do.
I feel like this is the space we're in with this climate work, is that the early childhood field is ready. So how do we get everyone else ready to be a part of this and really take action?
Here at the Clinton Foundation, through Too Small to Fail, through the Clinton Global Initiative, and we aim to build multi-sectoral partnerships that really kind of set out to do big things, but we're not in the business of inertia or passivity.
And so what's the narrative? What's the change that we're going to make? So when kids 20 years, 30 years from now, they're telling this same story about something different.
We have to get out of the box and try big, bold, new things based on science for what is most important for our kids and their health.
I have been doing work on kids issues for 20 years and on climate issues for 20 years. And this is the first room that I've been in where those two issues are together.
We're very grateful to be in a community of doers and to figure out kind of what we can really begin to do together on these desperately urgent and crucial issues.
Please welcome to the stage Christine Burkhart.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Burkhart, and I'm with the Global Fund for Children. And we're really happy to have the opportunity to provide an update on our commitment from 2022 with you all today. We all know that climate and environmental hazards are having devastating impact on children's well-being. We also know that children and youth bear little responsibility for the climate crisis, but are disproportionately impacted by it. And yet they are rarely consulted on environmental policy and action planning. At the Global Fund for Children, we are shifting this narrative by supporting children and youth as leaders in this space. One way we are doing this is through our CGI Commitment to Action and our Climate Spark Fund. The Spark Fund provides funding and technical support to young people around the globe who are demanding action from policymakers, promoting sustainability, and educating their communities. And unlike other funds, the Spark Fund shifts the decision-making power to the young people themselves. It's designed as a participatory grant-making initiative, and the Spark Fund has already distributed over $1.2 million in funding to 56 youth-led and child-centered organizations around the world. Via our CGI commitment, we've launched a new round of grant-making in Southeast Asia, focused exclusively on climate resilience. With funding from Avery Dennison Corporation, the Porticus Foundation, Leonaid, and RS Group, we're supporting young leaders from Thailand, Vietnam, and Singapore who over the next several months will work together to select the next cohort of Spark Fund grantees in their communities. The demand for the Spark Fund has far outstripped its size. On average, we've only been able to fund 15% of the applications because of our limited grant pool. We know there are hundreds of other youth-led climate solutions on the world waiting to be realized, and we're looking for additional partners to help us expand this work. Together, we can empower youth-led climate action at the level it deserves to be supported. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Manasa Mantravati.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Manasa Mantravati. I'm a pediatrician, mother of 3 young kids, and now founder of Ahimsa. So the cafeteria is the greatest source of carbon emission for a school and a big source of chemical exposure harmful to children's health. Plastic is contributing to pollution and climate change, but we now know that it is also contributing to significant and growing health problems in children. Things like premature puberty, type 2 diabetes, obesity, learning disabilities, and cancer. Despite recent medical policy recommendations by the American Academy of Pediatrics to avoid plastic and rather use glass or stainless steel to serve food, most schools in the USA are still using single-use plastic in their lunchrooms. Through this Clinton Global Initiative Commitment to Action, Ahimsa is launching a 12-month program in New York City to decarbonize 25 school cafeterias and improve students' environmental health knowledge through our reusable foodware and customized educational curriculum. We're turning the cafeteria into a classroom, and we're decreasing the impact of plastic on health and our planet. We're partnering with educators like the Orchard School, environmental groups like Plastic Pollution Coalition, and beloved childhood entertainers like the Smurfs to really empower children to act tomorrow while we solve the single-use problem today. We will measure the carbon impact, financial impact, and education impact for our program. This model, which will break even for schools within the first few years, will become a standard that all schools across the country can build into their nutrition and food service plans. And it will help schools protect students from the health harm while also becoming more carbon neutral. People and the planet are connected, and the lasting impact between the two will not be felt by us, but by our children. Ahimsa's Conscious Cafeteria project aims to implement a simple, scalable solution for schools. A line of stainless steel foodware that can be reused for generations. It's that easy. Sometimes the biggest impact can come from making one simple change at scale. Thank you so much for having me, and I look forward to talking to you about our commitment.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Chelsea Clinton.
Good morning, everyone. As a parent of 3 young kids, one of whom is in a New York City public school, I would like to submit my son's school for consideration. I'm just doing that publicly and openly, so hopefully next year we can report on how this kind of personal appeal did or did not work. Not generally what we consider commitment updates, but I hope you'll grant me the grace. We are so delighted to be together today for our second full and robust day of CGI, and I couldn't imagine a better conversation to have this morning than one really focused on the impacts of climate change on our most vulnerable, our children. Many of us looking forward to today were, I must say, elated that His Holiness the Pope also called out not only the issues of children and climate change, but the ways in which these 2 kind of urgent missions to ensure that our planet is sustainable far into the future and that our children today are kind of given every bit of safety, security, kind of health and investment that every child deserves everywhere, but that he also kind of linked the 2 together, felt like the perfect introduction to this morning, although he probably didn't know that sitting in the Vatican. But we certainly did, and we're so thankful to have so many of Too Small to Fail's kind of advisors and partners in the room. Too Small to Fail is our early childhood initiative here at the Clinton Foundation. Ralph Smith, Joan Lombardi, many others also really want to acknowledge our just indefatigable leader, Patty, without whom really I don't think we would be here. Patty Miller, who just kind of continues to imagine with her small but mighty team that is indeed too small to fail itself, to continue to kind of think about all of the places where we can do a better job of supporting children and their parents and the other caregivers in our youngest lives. So whether that's in laundromats, on playgrounds, in school cafeterias, we always want to be kind of in partnership and fellowship with all of you to think about how better we could do the work we're doing today and how better to kind of imagine the work that we will know is important for tomorrow. So just a huge amount of gratitude. I also want to say kind of how thrilled we are to have Jen Newsom with us, who has just been such a leader, not only in her state of California, but really around the country in kind of pushing us to think about both what the public sector, but also the private and philanthropic sectors need to be doing to support our children at every stage of life. So without kind of further delay, but with kind of one more point on trying to recruit the plastic-free cafeteria program to my son's school, it's just with enormous pleasure that I invite Peter Langham to come kind of take the actual stage and microphone. A long-time kind of advocate for child health and well-being, kind of a longtime visionary in this space, and now the CEO of the Conrad Hilton Foundation. And so, Peter, please come to the stage, come to the microphone, and most importantly, come kick off our vital conversation this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chelsea. Great to see you all here in this room. As Chelsea said, I've been working on this for a long time, for the entire length of my children's childhood, about 25 years, and I know a good number of the people in the room. We have known for decades that investing in young children is one of the most significant things that we can do with the highest rate of return, $17 to $1 invested, compared to $1 for $1 invested in tertiary education. We know this, but we smile upon investment in early childhood in a lot of cases. So I'm very heartened to see people on this panel who have taken the plunge, who have really promoted this, whose governments and whose organizations are making tremendous contributions. The Conrad Hilton Foundation works in 3 zones on early childhood: Eastern and Southern Africa, refugee contexts like Uganda, Ethiopia, Colombia, and Ecuador, and in the United States in Los Angeles County and in New Mexico. All of that with a 2-generation approach, the health, well-being, and potential of young children, but also the livelihoods and well-being of the young adults who often take care of them. And in each of those areas, if you can think of them, all have climate challenges in front of them, and all are seeking to address them. I wanted to make just one point to keep in people's minds today. We talk a lot about the impact of climate on children today, but we should be equally thinking about these are the scientists, the stewards, and the good citizens of the future that we are raising. So every day, every moment invested is a moment invested in the future of the planet and in addressing the climate issue well. But that's basically all I have to say today, besides moderating, encouraging, cajoling, and goading a wonderful conversation. So please join me in welcoming first Dr. Renee Boynton-Jarrett, Associate Professor of Pediatrics and Director, Vital Village Network at the Boston Medical Center and Boston University. Renee. And then Mayor Kate Gallego of the great city of Phoenix, Arizona. And then Jennifer Siebel Newsom, the first partner of my state of California. Very happy to have you. Providing gender balance, Mark Del Monte, the CEO and Executive Vice President of the American Academy of Pediatrics. Mark. And finally, Nseda Witherspoon, Executive Director of the Children's Environment Health Network. Terrific to have you here. I'm going to ask a few questions on the challenge, then some questions on solutions that have been very actively promoted, and then how to bring it all together and synthesize it. And then say, we'll start with you. As Executive Director of the Children's Environment Health Network, you've been a long-standing and vocal advocate, raising up children's vulnerabilities to environmental factors. Can you please tell us a little about your organization and the work you lead?
Sure, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here with all of you. The Children's Environmental Health Network is a national nonprofit based in the United States with implications globally. We do provide some leadership globally. And for over 3 decades, we've been working to promote our mission, which is protecting all children from known environmental hazards. And we do that by promoting peer-reviewed science and translating a lot of that science into action. So a lot of translation into curriculum and training and child protective policies. And a lot of our work is done in collaborations and partnerships. That's vital to our work. So engaging with youth is critical. We have a youth engagement program, so it's reciprocal, it's not just extractive, where they are sharing all kinds of insights of their lived experience and their work and what they're seeing on the ground level and how they might help us prioritize our work. And then also we're providing youth engagement, professional development, and all kinds of mentoring and fellowship opportunities. We also are a founding partner of the Climate Equity Collaborative, which is working at the intersection of justice, climate justice, and children's environmental health. That's the only effort that I'm aware of that's doing that at a global scale, trying to elevate work that's already happening, evidence-based proof work that needs leverage, it needs to be promoted, it needs to be modeled, just like we've heard earlier this morning. And then also we have work happening at the global level, which I'll talk about in a little bit. We also have the Eco-Healthy Childcare Program. These are just a couple highlights of our work, working to train and educate childcare professionals on low to no-cost steps that they can take, and work that is done to also help educate their parents on low to no-cost steps they can take to promote healthy and safe environments. So these are just a few of the ways that we're trying to engage and provide leadership for over 3 decades now, and happy to engage with all the rest of you.
Very inspiring. Now let's talk about the issue of climate, the disproportionate impact of climate on young children's lives and health. What are you seeing?
Yeah, thank you. In the short period of time that we could have a dissertation on all these topics. Clearly, we were talking earlier, climate change may be the largest threat to children and their children being faced globally. It's not just the mental health and physical health and economic impacts, but it's also exacerbating environmental contributions and environmental threats. So there's many layers of jeopardy here. Excuse me. So looking at asthma and upper respiratory illnesses, for example, they are all exacerbated in childhood by the rising heat index. We have all been living through the warmest summer ever of our lifetime. We are expected to have even warmer climates into the future. Also, increased vector-borne illnesses. Vectors like mosquitoes carrying illness. This is also exacerbated. 820 million children globally are being impacted and at higher risk because of this. Increased water contamination. This is over 940 million children globally. Increased droughts and flooding conditions, which are also increasing exposure to children. And then we also have mental health considerations, trauma, injury with wildfires and more extreme temperatures and weather patterns. All that to say that there are huge disparity considerations across the board here. So if you are a child living in a marginalized community, a child of color, you are living on the front lines of the global climate crisis, you are more likely to live in flood zones, living in areas of wildfires or drought, and our crop cycles are being impacted as well, so children do need food, and our crop cycles are at risk. They cannot be too saturated or too dry. And then if 1 in 3 children globally are at risk for not just a few of these indicators, but at least 4 of them simultaneously. So you're either closer to live near a polluting source if you're a child of color or in a marginalized community, or at the climate crisis. So the message cannot be more urgent to act, and I'm sure all of us are not ready to let this go by and allow the continued cycles to continue to put our children in harm's way.
So say you bring a lot of energy and a lot of effort, and you confront a very great problem. Mark, you as well, in heading the American Academy of Pediatrics. You have been a long-standing critical partner of Too Small to Fail and the Clinton Foundation, and AAP has a very broad agenda and an ambitious one to ensure the health and well-being of children. So how does AAP think about climate change?
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me to bring the voice of 67,000 pediatricians to this conversation this morning. It's very important that the entire medical community participate in this, and so we're happy to have pediatricians lead the way. And this conversation for us really started prior to 2007, when a group of our members sort of touched on a growing movement within the academy to realize that everything the pediatricians know about children was very deeply connected to everything we were learning about climate change, and that even though this was a global earth justice movement, there was economic effects of climate change, it was very important for pediatricians to put health into the conversation. How do we get child health into this discussion so that not only is this an important issue for all of us as people who care about the earth, but this is a high stakes issue for children, and it's a high stakes issue for their health and future. And so in 2007, we said out loud for the first time, we were the first major medical society to do so, to say that actually climate change has impacts on the lives of children, and we have to think about this as a child health issue. Everything we know about children, they're smaller, they're closer to the ground, they're outside more, they breathe faster, they have higher surface area of skin to their overall body than the rest of us. They're much more vulnerable to all of these environmental effects that you've talked about already, and we have to think about it in that way. And like everything else, the most vulnerable children are the most vulnerable children. And so children who are vulnerable to everything else are disproportionately impacted by the effects of climate change. And so it was important for us as the American Academy of Pediatrics to use our loud voice, our megaphone, to say, we have to think about this differently, and we have to bring children and children's health into this conversation. And so that was 2007. We've been at this for a while now. Delighted to see that intersection of conversation now between health and environmental and justice and climate change, and we hope to continue to lead that conversation.
Thanks, Mark. And the commitment and credibility of all those pediatricians is just a tremendous asset to this work. Now, let me ask you, in 2015, you issued a report, AAP, on climate change and on the effects on health, on the environment, on ecology, and particularly then on children's health. 8 years later, we're having this conversation. We have things to show for it, but we've got a lot of road ahead of us. So tell us about the time since that report, what you think has moved, what it hasn't moved, and what we all should do in order to connect the dots and move the issue forward.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first of all, we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
So I'll take that as a win. There were not rooms like this in 2015, and there were certainly not rooms like this in 2007. And so that is progress. But I think the entire health community and everybody who thinks about the health of children has to add climate change into their own discussions of health. We have to talk about that, where we're talking about injury prevention or infectious diseases prevention, or that as we're speaking about health, we have to just add climate change as a part of that. It needs to become part of the nomenclature, the way that we discuss the future of children's health. If we're thinking about healthy development, early brain development, adolescence, young adulthood, all of that is deeply impacted by climate change and the effects of climate change, not only in the United States, but certainly around the world. What's happening at our southern border of the United States is deeply connected to climate change. And so we cannot really think about the health of all children without connecting these dots together. So we'll continue to do that, I think, and we continue to partner with anybody who will partner with us. But I think we all have to sort of take on a personal mission here, and to communicate better and advocate better and to network more and to get this conversation into more rooms.
In other words, it's a stand-up moment for everyone here and everyone at this conference, everyone this week. And I think we hear about climate adaptation and think about very low-lying areas in small island nations far from us. But really, it's in our own homes. So thank you. And now we can move on to some very impressive solutions that have happened in California and in Arizona. And first partner Newsom, the scale of the challenge and the scale of the solutions in California is breathtaking. In Los Angeles County, where we're based, it's a county of 10 million people, as big as all but 8 states. And California is 4 times as big as that. So tell us, the state is home to a quarter of the young children in this country, and unfortunately is also, as people know, experiencing a lot of the climate disasters that we hear about. So as first partner, you've led several initiatives to ensure the children have healthy childhoods. Could you tell us about the California for All Kids initiative? How are you prioritizing children, particularly young ones, in this program, and how is changing climate impacting your priorities?
Great. So thanks so much for having us here from California. It's such a treat. I'll start with kind of big picture. The governor's really focused on clean transportation and was really the leader in committing California in 2020 through an executive order to all passenger vehicles being zero emission by 2035. And this is transformational because this is where the majority of the pollution and toxins were being committed. And so what we're seeing now, which is really exciting, is that we've invested $1.8 billion into zero-emission buses. We have 1,800 zero-emission buses currently out there. The money's going to be continued to be distributed over the next 5 years. So we're going to continue to see cleaner air, especially in the Central Valley, which is sort of a hub and container of so much of the pollution. So this is really good for California children, but all Californians. Second of all, we've invested millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars in greening our schools. We are still working on this. These have been beautiful public-private partnerships. One of the schools I visited, fully in Oakland, fully, asphalt transformed into this gorgeous play area with a green lawn, a school garden, water fixtures, right next to a park, a community park. California is very proud of our state parks. We have 200 state parks. But as we know, many communities don't reside near those state parks. So having these community cups and then having these green schoolyards with, I believe this one had 58 orchard trees, so for shade and cooling the playground. They're so inviting. And not only are the children benefiting from being in this cooler, nurturing, green habitat, socially and emotionally, but the administrators and the teachers who happen to be stressed out, surprise, surprise, find themselves spending more time in the school garden. And so that's another benefit. And then, part of our California for All Kids initiative is also a huge investment in state parks and our Adventure Pass, which is the equivalent of a fourth grade pass, which have already 29,000 passes have been distributed, whereby families, not just the fourth grader, are able to visit these gorgeous state parks. And for those of you that have been to California, those are our state parks. And I highly recommend, if you haven't visited them, many folks live there and don't realize the benefit. I was just up in Jenner and had never spent time up there and was along the coastline, and literally a friend that I was with wanted to keep walking because she's like, we don't have this in Sacramento. This is just magical. We're not going to get this again. It's just, there's so many different topographies, and just the geography of California's, you get to, whether it's the desert, the mountains, or the water, it's just magical. So California kids are benefiting from that. We also have a Library Parks Pass, which 40,000 families have pulled those passes out, and that was one of our initiatives I'm very proud of, because again, we're trying to remind Californians of all the benefits, the free benefits to them, and just to remind them that these are their parks. So, and then my biggest initiative is First Partner out of the gate for California's children, outside of the mental health piece, which I'm 100% committed to, but was Farm to School. And I can talk about that later, but essentially, a big picture, this led to it being easier to pass into legislation universal meals, and the marriage of universal meals and Farm to School is that every public school kid in California has 2 free school meals a day, which is 75% of their nutritional intake, are fresh, nutritious, delicious, and locally sourced. That is our goal. We're, a third of the way there for every public school kid, and it's transformational.
Thank you. Thank you, First Partner. If I may permit myself a brief African insert between California and Arizona that follows directly on the farm to school comment. The winner of this year's Hilton Humanitarian Prize is an organization called 1 Acre Fund, which supports smallholder farmers in Africa, the most vulnerable population to climate change, and has a big component about training to be the farmers of the future. And a lot of solidarity, I think, with California agribusiness.
That's right.
Mayor Gallego, now you saw yesterday probably how perturbed New York was by a few drops of rain.
Send it to us.
If I may, your city has endured 54 days of 110 plus degree heat this year. You've stated that Phoenix is becoming the most sustainable desert city. Can you share some strategies with us regarding your approach?
Absolutely. Phoenix, our economy has been built on the sun, whether it's training so much of the world's airline pilots or solar energy industry, but this summer was record-setting and brutal. We spent a lot of time focusing on our most vulnerable populations, trying to make sure that they could get comfortable, and also trying to just adapt the city. We have a lot of good solutions, and if people are interested in some of the things we've learned, we have shared them with cities from London to Portland. One that is probably particularly popular with folks with early childhood expertise has been our Canopies for Kids program. We know that if you plant a corridor of trees, you can reduce the temperature that people feel by 10 to 12 degrees, and so that's enough to really make a difference. And there's something magic about kids planting trees. Just seeing kids be involved in planting and how they want to come back and see it grow. I still go back to trees I planted as a young child and feel like some ownership of that. And we partnered with schools. We planted them along corridors where we think children will be, like between libraries and schools, and it's been a great success. The Biden administration is really investing in urban forestry, and so that's something that I would recommend to all of your communities. It can capture carbon, it can cool, and kids love it. We are very focused on kids in the city of Phoenix. We are very proud to be the largest city in the country with a mom majority of elected officials. I have been a birth to 5 mom for most of my time as mayor. I just made it past the milestone. My kid is now 6. But he is very much on our motivation, and so we think of things like safe schools all the time. We have a similar program where we're trying to electrify buses for schools and general transportation. We don't want kids to grow up with challenges around asthma. I had childhood asthma. I think that's one of the reasons I got an environmental degree and was on the path to where I am now, but I wouldn't wish that on anyone. We at the City of Phoenix are also just trying to look at the decisions we make with building materials and how we design our community. We have the largest cool pavement program in the country where you put a lighter colored sealant on city streets, and they're more likely to reflect light as opposed to the hot black asphalt absorbing it. We had an overnight low of 97, so the urban heat island is a real challenge for us, and we just have to rethink how we design cities. We are learning that some of the tools our indigenous founders used still make a lot of sense today, and are trying to go as much as possible back to our native landscapes. So the City Council unanimously passed a very important sustainable desert development guideline policy that will help us get that natural landscaping. And we are proud to be the city with the most acres of parks in the country, so that open space is important for climate, for kids, and really for the kind of city we want in the future, and we're trying to grow and add to that program so that we can be more adaptable. If you have an innovative green building technique, we want to try it because you can see what the stakes are. We have to get this right for the City of Phoenix to succeed.
Thank you, Mayor Gallego. Very, very impressive. I would say LA is trying to give you a run for your money in terms of our first female mayor and a 5-woman board of supervisors. But may you all take us far. And then Renee Boynton-Jarrett. Now, Nsé and Mark laid out the problem for us. The first partner and the mayor talked about some very promising solutions. You are perhaps the perfect person to tie it all together. No pressure, right? You're a practicing primary care physician working in Boston, so you witness these impacts on young children daily and on their families. You're also partnering with the same families to address them. Can you tell us a little about what you're seeing, especially in the Vital Voices, the Vital Villages network, how families are working together to identify and develop solutions?
Yeah, so I think I love how the science and solutions have been laid out by this incredible panel. And I love that the Clinton Global Initiative and Too Small to Fail is holding space for this conversation. We have to be able to meet this moment. Societies are often judged in terms of how just and how fair they are in terms of the health and well-being of their children. And we have challenges. We have a maternal morbidity and mortality crisis in this country that affects all birthing persons and all women. So not just people of color, but all are doing poorer than comparable countries around the world. Full stop. Right? Move beyond that, and you see extreme disparities depending on your race and ethnicity in maternal morbidity and mortality in 2023. So we have to begin to think about this as a much more interconnected narrative when we're discussing climate change and the significant implications. So when you think about its implications on fertility, fecundity, reproductive health outcomes, low birth weight, miscarriage, they're significant. We think about the impacts on children, their health and development, they're significant and profound. So we have to begin to kind of step back and think about the larger structural actors that are placing us all at risk and placing populations made more vulnerable by these structural actors at greater risk. So you have to begin to think about structural racism and how it is impacting this conversation around climate change. As laid out by colleagues here on the panel, there are communities and children that are suffering the greatest brunt of these environmental challenges right now. And when we're thinking about solutions in this space, are we thinking who is worthy of being a solution holder? Who are we thinking of? Are we thinking of the person who picks the fruit that we eat? Are we thinking about the person who may serve food to our child in the cafeteria? Who are the designers of the solutions? So our work with Vital Village, we do local work nationally, but hyper-local work really thinking about how we pull community wisdom, innovation, solutions, ideas to the forefront of our work to honor the dignity of every child, the dignity of every family, and really build an equitable future that addresses climate change. And there are incredible solutions at the community level that are often not being acknowledged. Social entrepreneurship, local farmers, but part of this is also beginning to address systemic and structural injustices that have taken place over time. Who owns their farmland and who doesn't? Who has access to governance and decision-making structures? I think I'd love to, I know last year the Clinton Global Initiative honored the late Dr. Paul Farmer. And I think Dr. Farmer's model of accompaniment is really important as we think about what it is going to take for us to move ahead. And accompaniment means not just prioritizing particular science expertise or technological expertise or certain forms of wisdom, but actually having the compassion, the grace, and the ability to really partner equitably with those who have a fundamentally different expertise than you may have. Cultural wisdom, lived wisdom, experience that is profoundly different, but absolutely vital. And really recognizing that we are in the same ship together, and that degree of working together is a much more sustained commitment. And one of the things that Dr. Farmer said was, we lack imagination. And I think kind of pulling children into this space, they are demanding that we have a much different imagination of what this future should look like and what our collaborations, partnerships, and solutions should look like.
Thank you. I really appreciate the heart, the sense of justice, and the grounding and the dignity of everyone that you bring to the panel. Tell us, I understand you have worked on the issue of birth equity. Tell us about how you see that and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, so when we're starting to think about how we begin to face these urgent equities and injustices and inequities that we see in birth outcomes and maternal morbidity and mortality, we really begin by, one, thinking about who is the workforce that is able to address birth equity and birth justice. So really broadening that workforce to go far beyond traditional folks such as myself or someone who may be trained as a practitioner, but really thinking about people within communities who are trusted, who are resourceful, and have a different type of cultural understanding and knowledge, and how that can be used to really listen to people and to hear people. One of the biggest challenges that is coming up in every study is that women are not feeling heard. They're feeling like their concerns are being dismissed. And I think there's an interesting parallel there as well in terms of how young people talk about our perspective on climate justice. Who's being listened to? Who's being heard? Whose word is being believed, and who's being challenged. And so I think we as a society have a lot of work to do around how we listen, but also how we show accountability. So nonprofit organizations, anchor institutions like hospitals. I work at Boston Medical Center. Anchor institutions like hospitals, school systems, our local city governments and governance structures. We have to actually have accountability structures, not just for hearing community voice, but for incorporating them in governance and decision making and being responsive. So how do we operate as trustworthy institutions? A lot of times we talk about trust, building trust with families, building trust with patients, building trust with the community. How do we actually demonstrate trustworthiness first?
Indeed. Before I ask you to round us out with what gives you individually hope, I wanted to just take advantage of this great brain trust we have here and ask you about the next generation. We tend to think of climate as a hair on fire, gotta solve it today, do something today issue. And of course, we all think about children's issues in the same way, children as very young children. But think about the next generation who will be up at this panel in 25 or 30 years. If you've done your work well, where will they be? What will they be able to do? What will we have bequeathed to them? And anyone can just pop into this.
Thank you. I'm happy to jump in. As the mother of 4 children, ages 20 through 7, we talk often. They're frustrated, right? They're not the only ones, and they have every right to be. This is a huge burden that they've had nothing to do with, as we've talked about, that is now laid on them, so I appreciate the question. I would like to believe that by doing a lot of what our panel members have been saying, listening, genuine partnership, really showing up for them now, not, again, kicking the can down the road, that hopefully we would see a panel of innovators that are, first of all, healthy. Our child health outcomes are showing us that our children are not healthy. We're living among the first generation to potentially not be healthier than their grandparents and their parents. The writing is on the wall, right? So if we continue around the same way that we are doing the same business as usual, we will continue to have the same type of outcomes. Sicker children tend to be sicker adolescents and not very healthy adults, which then have generational impacts. So hopefully we will have a panel of excited, healthy, young people who are now giving and nurturing their full potential and not being held back by their negative health and injustice implications, and that are also showing us a much different way, quite frankly, a system that we have yet to ever see. A system that puts justice and the most vulnerable first, which creates a national protection for all of us.
First partner? Oh, Mark?
I am really proud of a few things, if I can share. Our Climate Corps, our College Corps, California's volunteer program in California is larger than the Peace Corps. I'm extremely proud of it, and I see those youth up here in the future. Simultaneously, the investments that we've made into Farm to School, if I can just share it, because it's a trifecta approach to solving so many problems. I would argue the largest problems of climate and health and also the economy in California. Not only can I see those children up here as environmental stewards where I think our Farm to School program is that initial education, because they, not only are they planting and harvesting gardens in their school, but they're learning to cook food, and they're learning math and science in the process, and physics. You name it. You can teach anything in a garden or in a culinary classroom. There's so many social emotional benefits as well. But if you think about their health, the physical, mental, social emotional, cognitive, and behavioral health are all better when the 75% of the calories that they consume daily come from this, organic, regenerative, fresh produce that they then bring home what they've cooked in school or learned to cook to their families, so then their families are eating better. So the health benefit is tremendous. The economic benefit is tremendous because we've invested over $600 million in upgrading school kitchens and training food service workers. So there's a whole new job set, stable and really, prideful job in the food service industry, where we have these apprenticeship programs, and these are they're real jobs, they're full-time jobs for the locals living in these communities, on top of obviously the climate benefits. When, California historically and today is actually producing 2/3 of the country's fruits and nuts and 1/3 of the nation's vegetables, and then 20% of the country's milk, and we have 400 food commodities. So we're obviously big in the agricultural realm. And so for me, thinking about the impact of us connecting the dots to our Farm to School network between local BIPOC, small and medium scale farmers with schools and school districts, there's less transport, less carbon offset. So it's very exciting. All of that I share because there's all of the youth that are benefiting from this and being exposed to this will be here, and they will be our climate leaders as a result of this experience. So in some ways, that's what gives me hope, and that's where I feel like in the future they'll be more connected to food, more connected to the environment, and more connected to each other through the community that is built when we break bread together and actually connect over a meal, which we all have to do 3 times a day.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And if the Mayor Gallego, Mark, and then Renee, if a minute or less, what do you see in the future?
We have a wonderful program at the city with student councils where we ask student councils to have a sustainability officer, and that becomes a person who's really leading on sustainability for every high school and is a repository for great ideas. So we've had wonderful ideas from shade canopies to water bottles, but it's just neat what they can come up with. I also hope in the future that your zip code doesn't determine your outcomes. When I had my son, a community health worker came to see me while I was in my hospital bed. It was day one as mom. And she said to me, because your son is Latino and the zip code in which you live, he has a 10-year lower life expectancy. It's my first day as mom, and they're already telling me I'm behind. I don't know that would be true for my kid, but it is for a whole lot of moms out there, and may in 25 years, no one have to hear that.
Amen. Amen. Mark.
Well, I'm inspired by what I've heard so far, but what gives me hope is the young physicians who are coming into the American Academy of Pediatrics, the young people who are interested in careers in healthcare, and all of the patients that they're focused on. I really believe that they are untethered to all of the boxes that we find ourselves in, all the rules that we apply to what we can do and not do because that's how it works. They have abandoned that. They think that's silly and would like to leapfrog right over it into solutions that we can't even imagine. So I trust them tremendously. Hurry, take over.
Yeah.
We're ready for you. We're excited to have you here. And because they believe very simple things that they teach me, that if you build a healthcare system or any system, an education system, an economic system that works for children, it will work for everyone else. And if you just take that as your primary goal, you'll get it right. And so I am optimistic and inspired by the people coming up.
You guys are pumping this crowd up with hope. That's good. All right, and Renee, it falls to you again to take us home.
Yeah. Oh my. Well, we have a community food systems fellowship that are fellows, local community leaders across the country. They're farmers, social entrepreneurs, chefs, caregivers, that are working together to actually transform and create more resilient local food systems. And it is inspiring to me every day how they're working to actually integrate data and science into building a new evidence about joy and thriving and what resilience can look like at the community level. It's a profoundly different narrative. You might even consider it a counter narrative to what we commonly hear about local food systems, food insecurity, and food apartheid. And so it is inspiring to me to think down the road, the evidence, the science, the narratives would really be driven by local communities that are not just seeing deficits, but seeing an abundance of solutions and possibilities.
Well, that's great. Let's leave it on an abundance of solutions. And I think you've drank deep from the inspiration of health professionals, of government leaders, of civic leaders, and of people who believe in justice and in the future for our kids. So thank you very much. Join me, please, in applauding this panel. And now, Patty Miller, the CEO of Too Small to Fail, has closing remarks. Patty?
Thank you so much again to this truly just a rock star panel. Can we give them one more round of applause? Peter, thank you so much for your terrific job moderating this conversation. Renee, Mayor Gallego, the first partner, Mark and Inse, just tremendous. And we are so fortunate to have such incredible advocates like you out there really working on this issue. So thank you all so much for joining us here at CGI. I also want to thank Chelsea Clinton so much for her leadership on this issue at Too Small to Fail and all things Too Small to Fail. So grateful. And to our amazing commitment makers, Christine and Manasa, just thank you for the great work you're doing. It's just inspiring to hear about your commitments to action, and thank you also for reminding us to keep going and to really think how we all can work to promote climate resiliency. We're also very grateful to all of you in the audience for joining us this morning. We know it's early, so we really appreciate you being here, and for all the work you're already doing to address young children's healthy development. There's no question we're facing a daunting and urgent global health challenge, but I'm so inspired by the panelists I heard from today and from the work that all of you are doing in the room, so we're looking forward to working with you going forward. You know, Too Small to Fail is so grateful to CGI for the opportunity to have these conversations and bring together folks from across sectors. And we're going to be continuing to do that in the months ahead, and would really like to work with you to explore potential commitments to action that we can be announcing here next year on this very stage. So please talk with us, partner with us. We really want to work with you. And just very quickly, as next steps for Too Small to Fail, there's 2 things we're going to be doing in the next several months we wanted to share. First and foremost, with support from the Rockefeller Foundation, we are going to be working on the role of narrative in communications. We really feel like the general public needs to understand the implications of the impact of climate change on young children's healthy development. We'll be hosting a convening in early 2024 on the role of narrative in communications, and we'll be developing a playbook that we'll be bringing to Hollywood and sharing with content creators, and hosting several convenings around this issue, really trying to get this into popular culture so that folks really understand what a pressing issue this is. We also will be convening corporate leaders to have a conversation about the role that the private sector can be playing in this issue. So really excited to work with all of you going forward. We thank you so much again for joining us, and we hope you can join us for the morning plenary session in the ballroom. So we'll look forward to seeing you there, and thank you so much again for being here this morning.